is a professional horticulturist and an active garden writer and speaker. And I'm just going to skim through this long biography because it's very long. He was a student in horticulture and horticultural ed at Ohio State University, and after graduating from there, he continued at Cornell, where he received a master's in ornamental horticulture and horticulture education. He moved to Hawaii to assume the position of supervisor of education at Pacific Tropical Botanical Garden, where he set up an apprentice gardener's training program. In 1977, he became the director of the Pittsburgh Civic Garden Center in Melton Park. He next served 5 years as the chairman of indoor horticulture at Missouri Botanical Garden. You've had a diverse career, I must admit. In 1984, he joined the Atlee Burpee Company, the nation's largest mail order seed business, as its public relations manager and staff horticulturist. He's written many articles, and he's written several books. In 1990, he joined White Flower Farm, one of the nation's top mail order nurseries. He is sought throughout the United States as a horticultural expert. He gives horticultural talks throughout the U.S. and has made various TV appearances, including Martha Stewart Living, Home Shopping Network, and so forth. He's given over 500 lectures to horticultural societies, orchid societies, universities, and botanical gardens, including lectures at the American Orchid Society headquarters. He's written over 200 articles and has written, is it 4 books that he's, 4 books?
5, actually.
5. And you have them all with you to sell? Okay. He has 4. I have Orchids for Dummies, and it's a wonderful reference type book for those of us that might need an occasional reference for these orchids. He's an avid gardener and is interested in many facets of horticulture and has a special love for orchids and other tropical plants. He's living now with his wife Sasha in Asheville, North Carolina. So let us welcome Steve Frowine.
Thank you, Ruth. I guess you might wonder if I kind of got fired because I moved around quite a bit, but I did have a lot of opportunity, and I'm happy I did. But one thing was common all the way around was my love for orchids. In fact, I kind of left my traces everywhere I went, because orchids can be destructive when you're renting because they require humidity. And when I was a student, I grew them in my apartment, and I left the tiles pretty buckled when I left. And then when I worked at Pittsburgh, when I came to the place, they said, well, you know, you can, I said, okay, I get the apartment, that comes with the job, right? And electricity is covered, right? Okay, I just want to check that. So then I went into this room, and I sealed off this whole room and put a high-intensity lights in the whole thing. And it was a carriage house. It was a Mellon carriage house in Pittsburgh. And of course, when the humidity gets high, the plasters started to flake. So, but the orchids loved it, and it really grew well in Pittsburgh. So each place I've gone, I've kind of left my tracks from the orchids. But I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank you for inviting me, and especially for the wonderful hospitality I've gotten from Jan and John. In fact, way beyond the call of duty, I came here with a bad tooth. And you know how bad that is when you're on the road and you have a tooth that's driving you crazy. And Jan got me in to get my root canal, and I've never been so happy to pay all that money for root canal. I was for that, I'll tell you that. I mean, now I'm back to, I'm going to tell you, isn't it terrible when you have a tooth problem like that? It just eats at you, you know. So I'm very happy to be here for that. The other thing is I like when I travel places because it's such a beautiful spring now. You know, the spring greens everywhere, and we were traveling down from North Carolina. And I also think it's fun to just see things that are around you. Like, we had two things that were so ironic that we saw. We couldn't believe it. The first one was we saw this big adult bookstore, and right behind it was a giant cross. Figured that one out. Then the other one we saw was that poster that said, if you have drug problems while driving, call this number. And it had been run over by a car. It's just funny how these things are, you know. Anyway, I'm happy to be here. I've grown orchids. I was a plant nerd at a very young age, and I grew orchids in under lights. I got my first orchids, I think, when I was about 15 from Albertson Merkel, and I was talking with some of you about that. I grew under lights then, and since that time, I've grown most of the orchids under lights, although I have, since I worked in botanical gardens, I've grown in large quantities too. At Missouri Botanical Garden, have any of you been there? I think some of you have been here. Yes, I was. Yeah. So you knew Marilyn, huh?
Well, she comes to our shows occasionally.
Oh, great. Yeah, Marilyn do. And also there, Marion Pfeiffer was working with her then too. She was the older orchidist then. And at that time, we had about 10,000 orchids at Missouri Botanical Garden. Missouri Botanical Garden had been a repository for some of the old Paphiopedilums from England during World War II when they were trying to get them out of England to protect the old genetic material. We had those in our collection. So from that point on, and then I worked in Hawaii and other places, I've always really had orchids. Today we're going to talk about how to grow them inside, both in windowsills and under lights, and so I hope this will be helpful to you, because honestly, you can grow any of the orchids inside. It just matters how much you want to put into it. You know, we had a person we knew in New York, and she grew vandas in a garage in New York with high intensity discharge lights. I wouldn't want to see her electric bill, but I mean, you can do anything you want if you want to pay for it. So we're going to talk about practical ways to grow orchids inside. This is a shot that I took from when we lived in Connecticut, and this was a window, and this is why, see that stuff in the background? That's why we don't live in Connecticut anymore. when we first moved there, I worked for White Flower Farm. We moved there, and it just didn't register with me that we were really close to a ski area. And I didn't think about that. That meant there's a lot of snow. You know, we had like 100 inches of snow during the winter. And it was too much. Anyway, we left Connecticut and went to Mexico, and we were in Mexico for 8 years and then moved to North Carolina. So what we're going to talk about first is, I would say the biggest challenge you have when you grow orchids without a greenhouse is light, sufficient light. And you know, the windowsills are the first thing you're going to go for. Windows, using the windows. Now, this is a nice way to make use of a window, not in your living room where it doesn't look very attractive, but in an area where you can put multiple shelves up so that it can take advantage of the light that's coming in. And when we're looking at your windows, you have to look at the orientation. And I'm kind of surprised how many folks kind of don't know which direction things are. You know, like northwest, east, but if you can't figure it out, just when the sun rises, it comes up in the east. Okay, so if you have morning light, that means you have eastern light. If you have, and so eastern light and southern light, which were usually most of the time you have light pretty much the whole day. These are probably the most intense light that you have, and then north is the least intense. And then also, the further you go from the window, the more diffuse the light is and the less intense it is. Also, if you have a bow window, you can even have multiple directions of light coming in, which can give you different types of exposures and different light intensities. Also, where the light comes in, you know, during the winter, the sun is lower in the sky, so it comes in at a lower angle. And then as you get summer, it comes in at a higher angle. And during the part of the day, so the reason I'm pointing this out is that you can find that, you know, during the midday, this might be shady. During the morning, it might be really sunny. So these are different ways to look at your light. You can also look at light by just the way the shadow is cast with the hand. If it's very bright, you'll have real sharp differentiation, you know, between the hand and where the light hits. And then you have diffused up to low light. You can also get, now I didn't put the email address here, but for those of you that like to use your smartphone, you can go in and get an app that's free, a light meter app that's free. And you just go in their light meter app and you'll find it. And then you can use your phone to actually measure the foot candles, the brightness of your spot. So that can help you a lot to determine what area is bright and where area isn't. Also, the plants will tell you that. I mean, they'll tell you what the requirements are. If the leaves on the orchid are very stiff and thick and hard, they require very bright light. The ones that are thinner and softer require lower light. So that gives you some idea of what their requirements are. Plants also will let you know if they're receiving enough light. If they don't have enough light, you're going to get this real floppy, weak growth. And the distance between the leaves will get greater and greater. It'll be like a stepladder, where instead of being very compact. So that indicates insufficient light. The other thing is blooming is a real big one. You know, if it doesn't flower for you, that's a good sign too. If you've had that plant and you know that it flowers for you most of the times each April and it doesn't flower, then that's a sign probably too it's not getting enough light. Whoop, wrong one. Too much light can happen too. And you know, really, too much light really isn't usually too much light. What it is it's too much heat from that light. Because when the light hits that leaf, if there's no good air circulation around it, it heats up. And the leaf has the epidermis is like a plastic shield over it. And it causes then the heat to form between that epidermal layer and the leaf, and it causes then the burn. This is what you see down here. You have a burn that causes, usually it's an oval-shaped burn that causes that heat builds up in the leaf. If you have a lot of light, you can prevent the burn by just having a lot of airflow. And you'll see that in greenhouses, or you can create that in your own house. The leaves should never feel warmer than warm. If they're hot, you're going to get damage on them eventually. So feel the leaf and it'll tell you whether it's going to be burned or not. Yeah, also, if you have a really bright window, you can use diffusing material like this. This is a window that's in my office area, and I just got. You can buy it from eBay or whatever place you want to have a supplier. Just look for diffusing plastic, and it goes on with the water. You don't have to use adhesive or anything. You just put water on the back of it. It sticks right to the window, and then it diffuses the light. It's also nice if you're close to your neighbor and you don't really want to look out that window. It creates this privacy as well as diffusion of your light. So. Yeah, we have things you don't really want to see next door, so we also get that privacy. But these are nice shelving units, which again you can buy online. They're clear acrylic, and they're adjustable, and so you can hang them from the top of the window frame and make them whatever height you want, and it provides a nice show for your plant. And this happens to be a north-facing window, so in this case. I probably use this mostly when the plants come into flower. I place them there, and you know, when you do have a place that doesn't have much light, that can be a good place to put the plants when they're in flower, but just not expect them to grow there all the time. Rotate your plants into the area that's lower light so that they can be shown off, but also won't grow the full time there. Because orchids grow, as all plants, they grow in 2 cycles. They have a vegetative cycle and a flowering cycle, a reproductive cycle. So when the plant's in flower, it doesn't usually grow hardly any roots or leaves. All the energy is going to the flower. So in that case, if it's in flower, you can put it in a place without much light, and it won't matter because it's not growing. But once you see new growth starting on that thing, and the flowers start to wilt, that's when you want to make sure to get it into a brighter area so the growth grows well. And with some of your orchids, like the Phalaenopsis, when they flower, if they start to get smaller and smaller flowers at the end, that means they're running out of juice, you know. And you really should, for the benefit of the plant, should cut that spike all the way back and let it grow vegetatively again, so it produces new roots and leaves to create, and that'll give you a bigger flower the next time around. It's hard to do, I know, because you see the flower and how can I stand it and cut this thing back. And sometimes the flower, if the plant's really vigorous and doing well, you can just cut it back to the first bump on the stem, below where it's flowering, the first node. If you cut it right there, it'll throw another spike. But you don't want to keep doing that on the plant unless it's real strong. If it's not very strong, it takes all the energy of the plant away, so you don't want to do that. The right amount of light is when the leaves are stocky, the ear node distance, that's the distance between the leaves, is close. The foliage is light green. In most of the orchids, if the foliage is really a dark green, that usually means it's not getting enough light. The flower color, the orchid should be flowered at its normal time. Flower color is normal, not washed out. If the pigment of the flower is washed out, that's usually a sign not of light either. The leaves are more roundish than long. You know, look at when you bought the plant, if it was in good shape when you got it, look at the color of the leaves when you bought it, the shape of the leaf when you bought it. And it should be that similar shape. It should be a lot longer, and it shouldn't be a lot darker. If it is, then they're not getting enough light. Artificial light, with artificial light, you can really grow any orchid under artificial light. There's no limit. The limit is how much you want to spend on the type of orchid you're doing. Like some orchids, like the bandaceous orchids, require higher light intensities than the lace supporters or the moth orchids. So you have a limitation there. But this is a light cart that I have, and the light carts are an easy way to grow things, and they can be put out of the way so that it's not in the middle of the living room and then just plants brought up in there and flower. The multiple tiers, you can easily do them yourself. You can make them out of wire racks and use multiple layers of lights. And usually, if you're using carts and things, the standard 2-foot by 4-foot cart is going to be your most practical, because the fluorescent tubes comes in 4-foot lengths, and the trays come in 18-inch wide trays. And you can make them very cheaply, you know. You can get these wire racks like this at one of the home supply stores. You can buy these units, 4-tube units, from a lot of different suppliers online, or even in your home stores. And then these trays you can buy. These trays I got were from like Growers Supply. They're boot trays, and the ones where you store your boots. And then inside them I use a plastic grid, which I'll show you later. And then within that, even within a cart like that, you can have a variation in temperature between 10 or more degrees from the top to the bottom, just because of the natural distance, because heat rises, so it's warmer up here and cooler down here. The other thing I put on sometimes too is I put you can get the capillary matting, but you also just get like a felt matting, synthetic felt, and put that down on the base of them and use that to create humidity. And we'll show that a little later. Also, I surround my cart with a vinyl on the back and the sides. Instead of plastic, I get vinyl, and you can get vinyl like in the fabric stores. Vinyl is thicker and clearer, and it's easier to wrap around when I just clip them on the sides, and that increases your humidity and also holds in the heat around the plants, which can be beneficial if you're growing them in a cooler area. Also, if you want to have an area for set aside just for when the flowers are blooming, you can set up a setup so that the light is further off the plants than you normally. If you're growing them this far apart normally, you can put the lights up real high and just use that for plants that are in spike, so they have room for that spike to develop. I wanted to talk about some of the different lights they have, because there's a lot of different lights out there and it's very confusing. So the high intensity discharge lamps, these are used a lot too. Those are the real, the kind of, they're hooded and they have either a metal halide or a high pressure sodium lamp. And those can be used. They're pretty efficient. They're very warm. They're very hot to use, so you have to be careful of that. So you can use the high pressure sodium lights, or LEDs, or T8s, or T5s. So we'll talk about each of those and what the advantages are. The fluorescent lights for most of us is going to be the most practical solution. The units don't cost very much. The bulbs are available everywhere. They're low-cost bulbs. They have a flexibility in light spectrum, and we'll talk about later. They call it the color of the light, or the Kelvin temperature. They have an even light distribution pretty much over the whole bulb. I mean, it starts to fall off the last 6 inches at the back of each bulb, but more or less it's an even distribution of water, of light. It has a high CRI, they call it, which is color rendition index. That means it's closer to a natural sunlight. You can get ones that have very close to natural sunlight. They have lower heat, much lower heat than the HIDs, and it's simple to make your home units. So it makes it a very good choice. Orchids that are most suited for growing under the lights are ones that are the paths, the phalaenopsis, the seedlings of all types, and most all the compact to miniature orchids, things that are smaller like that. When it gets bigger like this, it's hard to grow very well under fluorescence because the light intensity drops off very dramatically as you get further from the bulbs. It's very hard to do that. So if you have really tall things, you're probably going to be better using something like a high intensity discharge lights that will create a high intensity even over long distance of space. But if you stay with things that are about that tall or less, you're okay. Okay, I mentioned the light intensity falls off very dramatically. Another source that can be used if you're in certain areas are the compact fluorescents. They can be screwed into various light fixtures, and they come in a whole range of light intensities and color of light, and they last a lot longer than an incandescent. And incandescent provide the wrong kind of color anyway. Incandescent provides mostly a very red spectrum, which causes plants to stretch, and they don't grow compactly. So the compact fluorescents are a good choice if you have spotlights or things like that that you want to use in a traditional screw-in type fixture. The difference between these bulbs is kind of confusing. The T12s, this is just the diameter of the bulb. It's in centimeters, so inches there, 1.5 inches. And the T8s are a little bit smaller, and the T5s are smaller again. The T12s actually have been targeted to be eliminated. They're inefficient. They're very inefficient, and they were actually supposed to be ceased being produced years ago. And that, well, eventually you won't be able to buy them at all. So you don't want to get into T12s if you're getting into fixtures because it's going to be obsolete very soon. The T8s, and because they're not efficient energy-wise, and we'll show you what I mean on that. T8s and the T5s, again just on the diameter, they're the ones that are being produced and will be for quite a long time. Probably T5 is going to be this choice in the it is already the choice for most growers, but it will probably be the one that everybody sticks with because of higher efficiency. If we look at the wattage level of the T12s and T8s, you can see that you get actually more light, more lumens per watt, that stands for, with a T8 than you do a T12. So it's a more efficient use of your energy. It has this lumen maintenance means it lasts longer, it doesn't disintegrate as quickly, and it has a higher CRI. That's a more natural color. The color is more natural, like the sunlight. So the advantages of one or the other is that T5s are more efficient, they give brighter light, they're more lumens per watt, they can frequently be turned on and off, they have good color, temperature, they're more expensive than T8s. Oh, come on here. Is this a secret message I'm getting? Did I win another lottery? Oh man. Okay. Let me go back on that. Okay. They're more expensive, they're shorter, they're a little bit shorter, so they need to have separate fixtures. In other words, you can't just put a T5 in a T12 or a T8 unit. The T8 advantages are that they have a large variety of colors. They can be used as a replacement in a T12 unit, although it's not recommended because the valves don't work as well. So in general, there are not really a lot of advantages of T8 over T5. T5 is usually a better choice for most situations. Their efficiency is, the T5s are a little more efficient than the others. And I will mention to you, I know there's a lot of information on these slides, but I created a PDF just for your group of exactly these slides and I've sent it to Ruth, and it can be sent to all of you that want it. Exactly the same slides I've ever, so you don't have to worry about notes or anything. I put all the same information in there, so don't worry if you can't remember all this stuff. It's kind of mind-boggling sometimes. Comparisons between the different T5s. There's T5, there's T5 high intensity, and T8. And this shows you the range. I would say for most things, I like the T5 HOs because when you have more light, that means that you can put the plants further away from the light, which means it's a lot easier to get into water and stuff. So the T5 HOs are probably going to be what most of you are going to find are going to be most useful for you. Another important improvement is that the most traditional T12s come with magnetic ballasts. And they're the ones that weigh like a ton and they have like black asphalt material inside of them. Well, they have been replaced by the magnetic or electronic high frequency ballast, and they're much superior. Because if you turn on those T12 and you're like that ballast noise can drive you insane. It doesn't seem like very much until you've heard it over and over again. But with electronic ballast, it has no noise and it comes on instantly. So, and it's much more efficient electrically. So if you get the units, make sure they have electronic ballast, not magnetic ballast. They're much improved. Less power, less heat, and cooler operation. They don't produce heat. Everyone is talking these days about LEDs, and LEDs are great, but LEDs are still a lot more expensive per watt than the T5s. And I think probably in, I don't know, 3 or 4 years maybe it'll get to a point where they're low enough cost that it's a good deal compared to T5s. But even if that happens, nothing you have for your T5 setup is obsolete, because the ones that are coming out now are tubes that have LEDs within them that have the same intensity as a T5. So you have the lower electricity cost, but you still have the higher intensity. But presently, those tubes are a lot more expensive than get T5. So I know a lot of people, you know, they like kind of, LEDs are kind of sexy now. Everybody thinks they're really great to get an LED. But when you look at the cost of the units, they're much higher than they are for the standard fluorescents. So at this time, I think you're still better off getting the T5s. And then eventually, if the others come down in price, you haven't lost anything. You just replace the bulbs. Okay. Also, now presently at least, the T5s have a much broader range of color you can buy the tubes in, which is another advantage because it's easy to get just the color range you want. We'll show you which colors you want to get. This is what I'm talking about. In the future, I think LEDs are going to be most practically used are the ones that are already in T5 tubes. They just put the LEDs in there, but it has the same kind of look. When you're choosing a bulb that you're going to use for your light garden, these are the kind of 3 factors you want to look at. The color, CRI, color rendering index, color temperature, and lumen output. And all this is available from the manufacturer. You just have to look for it online. And the color rendering index, the higher it is to 100, the more it's like natural light. And so you usually can get a good quality T5 in the 90 range, 90% range. Color temperature is like, when you hear about the wide spectrum bulbs and everything, that the temperature is related in Kelvin, so Kelvin temperature. So 5,000 to 6,500 is kind of a, that's 500 is 5,000 is what the color temperature is of sun at noon, and 6,500 is what it is later in the day. So you have that range, 5,000 to 7,500 K is what you want the bulbs you're looking for. And lumen output, the brighter it is, the better. That's all it tells you. And so each of the bulbs will actually tell you what the right temperature is. It's about 5,500, and that's usually what you want to look for. And some people have used, you know, the warm whites that you get in the stores, they're 3,000. That's not so great. Cool white, 4,100, well, that's not so great either. The daylight, that they call it, is 6,500 K, so that's a good bulb. Looking for 6,500 or 5,000. See, this is what we're talking about. This is what the color looks like. The one thing that's very confusing is that we think about red being hot and cool, and blue being cool, right? Right? I mean, that's what most people think of, but it's not that way at all. If you think about it yourself, when you turn on a gas range, if it's yellow, it's not hot, right? It's only hot when it's blue. So blue is hotter than red. So, so usually what we're looking at in here, the daylight is actually a blue light, which is the 6500. Then if we get toward the red, is the 5500 noon, and then we get down into these where it's cool white, and it's yellow. So we like to be up in this range, and this is more typical of the color you'd see in a sunny day
Isn't
outside.
that your blooming, that's your blooming range too, isn't it?
Blooming range, yeah. You know, there's a lot of talk about blooming lights being in that wide spectrum range, and I think, yeah, it's good for blooming and just for general growth too. You know, now you can blend together. Some people blend their things together. They put maybe a 3500 with a 6500. You know, half and half, and that gives them a broader range of color, and that works fine too. But in general, and that'll give you an average of around 5,000, which is what we're kind of looking at. Give you an idea of what would work for you. So that's what we have. Lumens is another thing. It just means the intensity of the light. So the intensity of fluorescence drops off very dramatically. I mean geometrically, so that if you're 2 inches away and then you go 4 inches away, it's not twice. It's not half the light. It's 1/4 the light, and it keeps going like that. So that's why with fluorescent light fixtures, if you're doing much higher than this, you've got such a difference down here than you have up here. And that causes a problem because your new growth's coming from the base. So when that new shoot comes out and it's very low light intensity, it stretches. And then it gets too long. And the plant won't be compact. So you want the highest lumen output per watt, highest CRI, preferably in the 90s, and a Kelvin range in general of 55 to 6500. What amount of light is best? The thing about growing under artificial lights is that, when you read in some of the magazines about light requirements for various orchids, and they tell you them in foot candles or whatever, usually that's based on greenhouses and what you do in natural light. But because you're going artificial light, you can make up for the fact that you don't have as high intensity by increasing the duration of the light. So, you can burn the bulbs 12 or 14 hours, whereas during the winters, here, you wouldn't have that bright light for 12 or 14 hours. So you can make up for the lower intensity of your lights by having more duration. And, some people also worry about, well, should I have these on timer so that, they change in the season so that the period of light changes. That's not usually very necessary because, remember, most of these orchids are from tropics, and they're on the equator. The equator means equal time distance, so they have very equal day and night year-round, unlike us where we're further north. So I don't really find that to be much of a problem. There are other alternatives, though, besides fluorescence, and I think that the HIDs, high density discharge, that's what they call them, that's another choice, and I've used them, especially good for growing real taller orchids, and they cover a large area, which can be handy. And there are two different kind of bulbs you usually get with the HIDs. You get either the metal halide, or they call them the high pressure sodium. In general, the high pressure sodium is a yellow light, and it's really not very pleasant. And actually, that's one disadvantage presently with a lot of the HIDs too. I mean, a lot of the LEDs too, because with the LEDs, they focus on blue and red light because that's what's used a lot in photosynthesis. But because of that, if you see someone growing under blue and red, it's a real artificial look. I mean, it doesn't bring out the natural colors of the plants. And that's the same way with the sodium vapor. It's a efficient light, but it's yellow, and it makes your skin gray, and it's not very attractive. So the metal halide is you can get it in a broader spectrum of light that's more attractive. This is kind of hard, isn't it? We haven't even talked about an orchid. And I'm sorry about that, but I think trying to get the technical part out will help you a lot to grow your orchids better. And so I hope that this isn't too much for you. But this is the idea of having the different wattage of the HIDs and how big of an area they spread the light on. So, of course, for the higher wattage units, they create a bigger growing area. Now, one disadvantage of having HIDs is that if you're growing in the basement or something, probably your neighbors are going to think you're growing pot. So you might get a knock at the door. So that comes with it. But you might already have that from light gardening. I've had that all the time. And actually, when I was going to graduate school, because I was in horticulture, I was in great demand for helping with germination techniques. And so, that was my claim to fame. All of a sudden you weren't such a nerd if you could help with germination techniques. Anyway, nowadays that's a very big demand, I guess. You can also get the HIDs that are on rails that, they'll give you a larger area to grow the growing space because it's moving back and forth, back and forth. I like this idea. I've had it before. God forbid if it stops. And it's mechanical, so things can happen. But I mean, people have grown. Have you tried these on rails? Or is it work okay for you?
Yeah, I have one in my breezeway that goes back.
So it's been pretty dependable. It's kept going. Yeah. Okay. How many of you are growing things under fluorescent lights now? Okay. And are some of you are using H5s or H8? T5s or
T5s.
T5s. What are the rest of you guys use? T8s?
I've got T5s.
T what?
5s.
5s. Yeah. Okay. So
The other thing I'll do with some of those ones on the bottom is if they're small plants, I'll just stack some pots.
yeah.
To get them closer to the light. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not beautiful, but it's functional.
No, I think it's usually it's easier to create fixed space and then bring your plants to it than to, they have these things on chains that, if you put them on chains, you better believe that thing will slip and it'll smash your plants, which I've had that happen, before. You try to adjust it, too much, and that right on the flower bud, So it's better off just, like you're saying, bring the plants to the light instead of the light to the plants. With lights, with all our growing things, humidity is usually an issue because the lights can be drying, because they're warm and they can dry out the air. So you need to have some way to increase the humidity around them. And I do that by either putting a crate, like this egg crate blueberry down here, in a tray, and then fill that tray with water. Some people use gravel in the bottom, but I find gravel not to be a very good solution because what happens, the pots tend to sink into that gravel, and also the gravel collects all kind of gunk. As soon as you water through it, it gets algae and all kind of stuff. With the grid, this plastic grid, which you can buy it in at home stores, it's rigid and it keeps the plants out of the water and exposes the air to the water to the air, so it evaporates easier. And if it becomes cruddy with algae, you just take it out and hose it off. And even before it becomes cruddy, you can just put little Clorox in that tray, and it'll kill the algae. So it's easier to control it that way and still have humidity. I also use humidifiers, which you can get. I go to Goodwill and buy humidifiers during the winter. Man, you can get really cheap, and so that helps to humidify the air too. And usually with humidity, you don't have to have, the wallpaper peeling humidity. I kind of went overboard there before. It's better off to have it like, 50, 60%. That's plenty. You don't have to go up to 80%. And it's still, when you're growing your plants close together like that, that also increases the humidity a lot. These are the trays I'm talking about. See these plastic trays? Do some of you use these? Yeah. They're pretty handy, don't you think? You can cut them to whatever size you want with a hacksaw, and it works very well. On the air circulation, it's important too because you've got heat created from these lights, and heat naturally rises, and then it just stays there. So you'd like to have some kind of air movement because that's what prevents disease problems and also prevents too much temperature stratification. So you have more equal temperatures in top and bottom. And if you have a chance to have a ceiling fan close to the area, that's really a simple solution. It's very effective because it breaks up the stratification of your temperatures. Within your unit, you can also get these muffin fans, they call them, like for computers, and they're very quiet and they move very, very gently. You want to have the leaves just barely move. You're not talking about a gust in there, just a little bit of movement so the leaves dry off, especially after you water them. Another thing that I find is that it matters where you're growing them, but if you're growing them in an area that's on the cool side, and in a basement or a garage, and you want to have a little bit of heat on there, but not pay for the whole area to be heated, you can use a heat mats like this. You just put a heat mat underneath it, a waterproof heat mat, in that tray where they're growing. You usually suspend a little bit out of the water, and then you can get a thermostat for it. You can set it for 68 degrees or wherever you want, and then it'll keep the roots warm. And the leaf top doesn't have to be as warm as the roots because the roots are where the plants grow. So it's a way for you to kind of have a microclimate of warmer area around the roots without heating up the whole room. And if you put plastic around the whole growing area, it'll also hold the heat in from the heat mat. So those things work really pretty great for me. I'm real happy with that. Haven't gotten juiced or anything. It's probably a good idea to use ground fault. Use a ground fault system anytime you got water around. And it's a good idea also with your lights to replace them like every 12 months or so because they do start to disintegrate. The light intensity drops off. Your eyes usually can't notice that, but it's happening. And so it's a good idea to replace them gradually, not all at once, but just start, after a year, maybe start replacing half of them. Just keep doing that so you replace them regularly. Keep the bulbs clean too because, they get splash on them. When you're watering the plants, they get calcium deposits on them. So keep them clean to keep the intensity great. Use ground fault. And the multiple layer trays can vary in temperature from 5 or 10 degrees from the top to the bottom, which you can use to your advantage, if you're growing orchids with different temperature requirements. So the general recommendations, if you're growing phalaenopsis or slippers or other low light, I would always still go with a 4-tube unit rather than a 2-tube unit. They do have more than twice the light because they help each other out. And try to get something that has a high Kelvin temperature range and of like 5,000 to 6,500 that has a high CRI. Even on lower requiring orchids, light required orchids like slippers and phals, I still like to use T5s because you can get further away from the tubes, so it's easier to control them. And also, if you have things like phalaenopsis with a large spike, they've got room for the spike to develop. For medium light ones, that's Cattleyas, Oncidiums, and miniature Vandation stuff, you definitely need the T5s to get good growth and good flowering from them. But the woman who was, I was telling you about, that grew the Vandas, she was a very interesting lady. Not only was she interested in the way she grew the plants in her garage, but because she was very independent, and she was in New York, and sometimes the New York shows could get kind of stuffy, and she was not stuffy at all. She wore these sequin dresses to all the events, and she didn't really care much for the orchid judging system. And so as a result, she was kind of shunned by the orchid judges there. And so when she entered her things, she didn't have a very good chance because they knew it was from this lady. Well, she then figured out that the way to get around this is to enter them through somebody else's name. And so she entered some of her orchids in the New York Flower Show under another person's name and won first of show And I'll tell you, the judges were not pleased with that at all. And she wore a red sequin dress, and she came out to collect her award. So, and she grew them just under lights, just totally under high pressure sodium lights. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, there's a lot of characters. You know, the thing is, if all of us, to your friends, if they don't grow orchids, we're weird. You know, we're weird. So just understand that. I mean, that's the way it goes. And I don't care about that anymore. I know I'm a nerd, so I just go with it. But that's the way it is, you know. I mean, most people don't understand why you would spend that money on an orchid. And, you know, when there are so many other wonderful things like a bottle of wine you could get, you know. But we know the difference, don't we? We know it's good. Yeah. I mean, you know you have a problem in the hobby when you don't want it, other people know what you paid for it. And the other thing is, what I find with orchid growing is usually the most expensive one is the one that dies. That's what I found. You know, it always works that way. And I think the other thing to keep in mind, when an orchid dies like that, you know what? You didn't kill it, it died. It was a weak gene pool. And you did the orchid world a favor because you eliminated that weak gene pool. So, you know, keep that in mind. You're doing the hobby a favor, you know.
Can't save them all.
Okay. I wanted to give a few other tips about growing and about orchids. One is, I know that orchid names can be real difficult for all of us, and I think, and especially with so many changes, and they just keep changing the name. It drives you crazy, you know. So I find that I've learned this lesson about pronouncing Latin names that I think really works for me. Is when you're around a table and there are a bunch of people looking at the orchids, and somebody pronounces a name, go with what the majority of the people pronounce it out. You know? Then you're safe ground. And then if no one will do it, then just take the courage and pronounce it with authority. Everyone will think you're right. Other things I found is my technique for perfect plants. If you follow this thing, you will always have perfect plants. Every one of your plants will be perfect. I call it destroy the evidence. Anything that's bad, throw it out. Any leaf is bad, cut it off. Then everything you have will look good. And that works for me. I mean, people say, oh, my plants are really nice. They don't know what I threw away. So I hope this helped you with some of the details. I know it was kind of a lot to take in because there's a lot of different details on it. But there's a lot of mystery about lights. And all these manufacturers tell you that, their light is the one that is the one going to grow everything. But just get down to the basics and look at the color of the light and the intensity of the light, and that will tell you. It doesn't matter what the brand name is. If they have those criteria that we talked about, fine. Get the cheapest ones you can get. There's just a lot of marketing that goes into horticulture, and we have the same thing with fertilizers. My mom had all the different fertilizers. You got a purple fertilizer for an African violet, and a red fertilizer for a rose, and it's marketing. I mean, those fertilizers are very interchangeable. Now, there are better orchid fertilizers than others. I think the Michigan State formula is probably the best, the MSU fertilizer they
This
call it.
repotme.com,
Mm-hmm.
I just bought some of that from them, and I want to give them a shout out because they will talk to you on the phone. They're old school, and besides having great products, they've got a hell of a website just on growing orchids.
Yes, well, that's good. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm actually starting a blog with them next month. So I do feel they're a very good company, and they have a really broad range of potting products. They know their materials, but I am starting a blog with them on the next month, and a monthly blog on kind of growing techniques and things like that because I think they're a good company. Yeah. Are there any other questions you have?
Yes, watering.
Watering?
What the specification of, do you spray your leaves or just sometimes to humidify the plant? Do you
Okay.
spray the leaves or not? Because some
You
people
know-
say after lunchtime, you don't put any water in the leaves or things like that. But
Watering seems to be so simple, but it's actually one of the most
Most
complex
complicated,
things
yes.
of growing orchids because there's so many variations involved. I mean, if you grow them in plastic, they dry off a lot slower than clay, and if you grow them in plastic, they dry out from the top down. They're in clay, they dry out uniformly. If you're in high humidity, it dries off a lot faster. If you're in high temperatures, it dries off faster. If it's more air circulation, it dries off faster. The type of media you're using, if you're using moss, it takes much less watering than if you're using volcanic rock or even bark. As far as misting goes, you could do that. It usually doesn't last very long. You mist it on, then it kind of evaporates very quickly. So usually you're better off having, like when I was showing those trays, I got that capillary mat that I put underneath the tray, so then it held water. And then when the air blows across it, it evaporates on a constant basis. And also, the other thing with misting, of course, you got to make sure you do it when it dries off real well, so it doesn't cause disease problems. And I'm not very familiar with the water in Louisville area, but if you have very much, it's hard. So then you have the deposits to worry about. Then it makes your foliage ugly when you keep spraying them. So I think probably in a hard water area, I've been in that way before, I think you're usually better off trying to use humidifiers or a moist mat so you don't turn the leaves white, because it really gets ugly.
You know what I'm doing? I've got the humidifier, cool air humidifier, but I get my water for it out of the refrigerator because it's got a filter in it. And I'm not getting any powder on that.
Yeah.
It's still hard.
Well, I think that sometimes and anybody uses RO, you can do that. One of the things is, when you're with hard water, you actually don't, generally, unless you have really clean water like him, you don't want to use the cool mist, because it will leave deposits all over if you don't have really clean water. You're better off getting the evaporative type, the ones that have little pads on them. They will muck up after a month or so, but at least they won't get on your plants. The air comes up cool and full of humidity, but not damp like a cool mist humidifier. Otherwise, that cool mist will get all over everything if you don't have really clear water. It just leaves like dust on everything, and it's kind of trouble. So I guess I'd say probably not to mist your plants very regularly. It's probably not going to be effective. It probably does more for the hand muscles than your and it builds up your hands. Anything else? General cultural things or anything?
How often do you feed?
Pardon?
What's your recommendation on fertilizer?
The fertilizer, as I mentioned, I really think that the Michigan State fertilizer that is sold Reed Bloomie and other places is probably the best overall fertilizer. There's a lot of different philosophies about the fertilizers. At one time, if you grew your plants in bark, everyone said you should use a high nitrogen fertilizer because the bacteria in the bark eats up all that nitrogen, so you need to compensate that with high nitrogen fertilizer. Now, Michigan State is the only place I know that actually made a study, and they found out what the orchids really need. And they found that they need a moderate amount of nitrogen, which is in their fertilizer, and a moderate amount of phosphorus. Earlier thoughts were too that if you really, they call blooming fertilizer, was real high phosphorus fertilizer, and they found that's not really necessary. It just pollutes the water. So the Michigan State is something that you can use all the time. It also includes trace elements, includes calcium and magnesium that's used to produce photosynthesis. So I would recommend that as the best one because it's one that's been researched and it actually has facts behind it. A lot of other fertilizers are a lot of hocus pocus, to tell you the truth. They dye the fertilizer green because they think that means it'll turn your plants green. But it's white fertilizer, but they dyed it green. And then they dye it purple because you're putting on Africa violet. You want to have those purple flowers, but no difference. So I would say that's my preference. The other thing I should mention is that a lot of the regular fertilizers contain urea. And urea is good for outside fertilizing, but in an inside environment, if it's not really warm, that urea never converts to the ion that the plant can use. And it sticks in there, and it can burn the roots. So the Michigan State is an ammoniacal type fertilizer that actually is instantly soluble, so that it's instantly absorbed with the plant. So that's another very good factor. A lot of the other ones don't, they use urea-based because it's cheaper, and, but Michigan State doesn't use that, so that's another good factor for them.
What about like strength and frequency? Because I read water weekly, half strength weekly, or?
Yeah, well, I think that usually most of it is about, I think it's like a fourth to half teaspoon per gallon if you do it every time you water. And in general, I would say that that's a better way to do it, is to do it weekly. Well, you know what, as far as frequency goes, you just water every time it needs to be watered with the fertilizer, and the frequency varies on the time of year. So during the winter, of course, it doesn't dry off near as quickly, so you don't fertilize as much. So that's the better idea, to have it weak, but do it more often so that it gets a gradual amount of nutrients instead of just shotgun every 2 or 3 weeks. And also keep in mind that fertilizers are not elixirs. They will not bring back a plant that's about ready to croak. Because what happens is the plants that are about ready to die, the roots are usually shot. You know, the roots are all rotted off. And so you put the fertilizer on there, they can't absorb it because the roots are not any good. They can't absorb the fertilizer. So all you're doing is adding salts to the solution, which is making the problem worse because those salts will burn the root tips. So only fertilize the plants when they're actively growing. What I mean is, if you're growing them under lights, they're always growing. So you can continue that cycle year round. If they're growing totally in windowsill, you really want to back off on fertilizer from probably October till March or so, until the days get longer and you get more light intensity, because they won't be able to use the fertilizer anyway, and it'll just burn the plant roots. Fertilizing is not as important as proper potting and watering. You know, fertilizing is a nice supplement, but it's not the thing that makes or breaks your growing routine. Yeah. Any other cultural? Yes.
You mentioned potting and the medium. You use the same medium for all plants, or did you vary it from your slippers to
You know, it's hard. It's a very personal thing, and really, the medium depends totally on your watering habits. If you tend to be a person who kind of waters a lot, then you want to get a medium that really drains rapidly, like of course your bark. If you're one that is kind of slow on the watering, you don't really want to water it often, then you go the other extreme of sphagnum moss. If you have sphagnum, you overwater, everything will rot, and if you don't water the bark enough, everything will dry out. In general, the smaller the roots, the smaller the diameter of the potting material in general. So, you know, if you have real fine little oncidiums and small plants, use a fine potting material like the bark or bark. The Orchidot has been one that's people find very good, and it comes in different grades. So if you're doing small plants or fine roots like oncidiums, the fine mix, and then you move on up through Cattleyas to medium, and Vandaceous things coarse. But other than that, I remember in Hawaii when they were discussing this wine guy said, I could grow orchids in cigarette butts. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I could grow them in anything. And that really is true. You can grow them in anything if you learn how to water it. And so if your friend's growing it one way and you copy him, but if you don't follow his same watering regimen, you're not going to be successful. So it's based on your watering regimen, on what you like. And if you find something that works for you, stick with that. You know, you'll learn which one works best with your climate and your watering
I
techniques.
bought the 3 different kinds from this repoppy.com. One for my fasts and frags, which I like. And then I like the Oncidium mix because it's kind of medium in terms of coarseness. I didn't like the Cattleya because it was the most coarse.
Yeah.
But they have got whatever mix you want, and I just think they're fantastic. Plus, I want to tell people that don't know it about this Rand air cone pot. I love that pot.
I use those too. It's very nice. It's a square pot. It's translucent plastic, and it has a cone up the center of it, so it gets air in the center. And the nice thing is too, with those translucent pots, you can see the roots.
Yeah.
You can see what's going on. You can see if they're dry or not, and you should be able to see, green root tips.
And they don't tip like a round bottom.
Yeah, they're rigid, they're strong,
great.
and they're also, they can easily be cleaned. I use them in the dishwasher, much to the disdain of my wife, but they work great in the dishwasher. You can sterilize them because it's a heavy plastic, it's not a real flimsy plastic.
Yeah, they're worth
So
money.
I do like
I get
them.
to clean out my dishwasher though and disassemble it. That's bad.
Oh, there we are. I thought my wife was gonna get, he got me.
Very bad.
Uh-oh, there's the truth. Well, I guess I shouldn't have revealed that. Now I'm in trouble. Well, I am the one doing all the housework, so I'll be the one to pay for that later. Are there any other comments or questions about culture or anything?
Yeah,
No? Anybody reluctant to ask or anything?
so you went to Ohio State?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Does it
but I did, yeah. Huh?
Does it bother you that Michigan State has the better fertilizer?
We gotta suck it up, you know. Gotta know the truth, I guess, you know, every once in a while. You know, it's funny in schools, and within horticulture departments, it's funny the differences too, because when this is the difference between a horticulture greenhouse and a botany greenhouse. I worked in the botany greenhouse too, in the botany greenhouse, everything are species, they're well labeled, but most of them are dying. In the horticultural greenhouse, everything's beautiful, but they're cultivars and half of them aren't labeled. So you got this battle going back and forth between, you know, what's good. And so I hope that you guys try all the ranges. You know, usually with orchids, you're going to find something you really like, and that's probably what you're going to specialize in because you do well with it. And it's better for you to pick an orchid that does well for you than trying to just buy an orchid and then try to make it work. It's much easier the other way. And I mean, it's frustrating. We go to a show and you see this gorgeous thing from Ecuador that's, you know, found 10,000 feet up and, you know, it's in the rainforest. Boy, wouldn't that be nice to have? But it's going to take you a while to have that kind of habitat for it, you know. So, you know, you can do it. But
I'm gonna tell you, I am really getting put out with the shipping costs on stuff. I feel like I'm getting gouged by a lot of companies.
boy, everybody's been called to task today. I'll tell you, you can't say anything. Well, I mean, it's a reality though. The shipping. I worked for a mail order company, and when you're shipping, you know what? You guys don't understand how lucky you are in the United States. I'm telling you. I lived in Mexico for 8 years. You want no shipping, you go live in Mexico. My wife, when she ordered a pattern, a dress pattern, we got it in the mail finally, and then she said, I don't remember ordering this. And we looked on the package, it had been sent 18 months ago.
Before, yeah.
And I'm telling you that, and also the duty that they charge in Mexico for everything. We are so lucky to have our service we have, I'm telling you. I mean, I know it might be, but I'm telling you, where else in the world could you get something in 2 days? You know?
I don't have any complaints
free.
at all
Yeah,
about the service.
But in Canada,
So,
very
really, so really, I mean, you're very lucky to have it, and also the U.S. has the best availability of everything. I mean, you know, you can get every kind of orchid in the U.S. and you can't get that hardly anywhere else in the world like we can here. So we are lucky to have it. Shipping might be high on it, but you know that's the reality. You're shipping weight, you know. So.
Well, we thank you so very,
Oh,
very
you're
much.
welcome.